Okay, to continue, his advocacy interests lie in the intersection of using digital tools for campaigns and organizing work beyond virtual spaces. Please welcome Mr. Chuck Baclagon.
What I'll be sharing is just a quick overview on what you can do on climate change and how you can ground the climate activism based on science and justice. So I'll just be sharing this very quick presentation, and then I'm more interested in how we would be conversing about the topic. Um, yeah. So right now we always hear the word climate emergency when we would be talking about climate change. And what do you think about when we see an emergency? Usually we reference it when with what we see in the photo, right? Someone being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance, or someone being transported to the hospital. This is a common sight, especially in the Philippines, because we are also facing the COVID-19 pandemic alongside the impacts of climate change. And what I can say is that currently, that is also the state of what we are in. Like, why do we have emergencies? We have emergencies because of if people get sick because maybe they are not taking care of themselves, or maybe the environment is not making it conducive for them to be healthy. And I think that thing can be said the same when we talk about climate change. So the Earth is actually sick, and but the question is why? Why is the Earth sick? We can answer that first by thinking about a greenhouse. A greenhouse basically are what you see in the photo. They are houses that, unlike ordinary houses, have glass or mesh as its roof and walls. And the reason for that is it is being used to regulate the temperature or the climate inside the house to make it conducive for the plants inside to grow and to thrive and to replicate. In a way, if we would look at the Earth, we are actually a controlled environment. And what controls our environment is our atmosphere. And it happens this way. We could imagine the glass in the house as something like the thing around the Earth called the atmosphere. So basically, what the atmosphere does is heat enters the planet, heat from the sun. Most of it is absorbed and warms the Earth so that it makes life conducive for the different species that live on planet Earth. Some of them are reflected back outside, um, and some are retained and distributed evenly in the Earth. The problem is if you look at the change in the slide, uh, the blanket that surrounds the Earth is actually getting thicker. So if you would lose the analogy of the greenhouse, that is the glass in the greenhouse becomes thicker, and therefore more heat that's coming from the sun is being trapped inside the Earth. And that is basically the fundamental science of climate change. It's called the greenhouse effect. So the atmosphere becomes thicker, it retains more heat, and it's similar to when you put in a blanket, right? You put in a blanket to regulate heat or to store more heat, but the problem is the blanket becomes thicker. And what happens if it becomes thicker? You sweat or you feel hot, and that's how the Earth is feeling right now. And that's what we call global warming, because the atmosphere is getting thicker. It's warming the temperature of the Earth. And what this is what happens when the Earth has become sick, right? We know photos of the animals in Arctic regions losing their habitat. We know of people getting their livelihood and planting, losing their livelihood or losing access to food because warmer climate means more regions drying up. In the Philippines, we become exposed to more floods because the warming climate actually disrupts the water cycle. So it hastens the evaporation, condensation, and precipitation of the water. And that's the most important thing to remember about climate change is that most of the Earth is 70% H2O or water. And water exists in three forms. Like it is solid when we talk about it in terms of it being ice in the Arctic regions. It is liquid in the seas and the rivers. and it is gas in the in the um, when it is water vapor in temperate regions or clouds in different parts of the world. The problem with climate change is that it hastens the water cycle. Water evaporates faster, therefore it makes the clouds heavier, and it makes the rain more uh, bigger larger in terms of the volume of the rain that drops, and that's what happens. It disrupts the natural cycle and pattern of weather, and that's what we call climate change. And why is it happening? Here are just some examples of what is making the earth sick. uh, it comes when we misuse the land, when forests are torn down to make way for plantations, um, when we cut down forests for cattle grazing to put in more animals for fast food, when we fail to segregate waste, when our transportation is wasted on having too many cars, and in relying on energy that comes from fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. Those are called anthropogenic greenhouse gases. They are man made greenhouse gases that cause the accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, causing global warming that leads to climate change. And it affects us in many ways. It affects us in terms of floods. This was taken in Manila roughly 10 years ago, when the strongest storm that poured a month's worth of rain landed in Manila, and it submerged 80% of Metro Manila in floodwaters. Um, it's interesting that the year following that storm, Manila was caught in a drought that lasted until August. So it was a summer that lasted from March until August. And this is the place where we normally get our drinking water in Manila, called Angat watershed. On normal occasions, the water should be at the same level as the trees. But if you can see how it might seem small, but if you could see the boat below and the tents, um, that was in a project that I was involved in, and we measured that the level of evaporation of the water in Angat was at 3 meters or 9 feet per day. So that's what caused the water crisis back at that time. And then here, there's also the impacts on who among you likes to eat fish, and this is the Great Barrier Reef. Because the oceans are warming, it makes it more conducive for certain species to thrive. And sometimes those species are quite invasive. Like this one, it's plankton that takes in the oxygen required for coral reefs to survive. So that's why they turn white. It's called coral bleaching. And this photo was taken from the Great Barrier Reef near Australia. It is the largest living organism in the world. It's also the largest coral reef system that hosts enables many fish to get their food, to find their mate, and to spawn and to lay their eggs. Unfortunately, because coral reefs are dying, many fish are also losing their habitats. Um, and then also it changes the composition of how, remember in the old photo where we say some of the heat from the sun is reflected back. That's where glaciers play their part. Remember, if it's in the summer weather, we usually wear lighter clothes because we want to reflect back sunlight from to reflect back sunlight. And that's how glaciers play their part. They reflect back sunlight so that it won't be stored in the planet. But the problem is, this is a composite photo from 1948, 2002, and 2006. As glaciers melt, more heat is stored. And the problem there is, underneath the glaciers are actually stored like a lot of organic matter that have been stored there before the glaciers, before the ice was there. So if those stored organic matter go out because of the warmer soil, it becomes methane, and methane is another greenhouse gas, and that would probably cause more warming. So those are just the climate. Those are called climate change impacts. And then the question is, with a problem as big as that, what can we do? We are young. Many of us are still in school, and we might think it's powerless. And I say we can do something. We can do certain things related to our lifestyle, and we can do certain things in our activities at school to do our part. There's things that we can do for emergent for energy efficiencies, like switching off when things electronic things are not in use, unplug when they are on standby mode. uh, we can walk when traveling short distances instead of riding motorized vehicles. We can practice zero waste in our school. I know I've been in the John Dewey campus, and I know you're practicing zero waste there. um, this is something that also benefits your health, because it also prevents you from drinking contaminated water if you bring your own bottle. And also, when you do your part by spreading the word, there are many things that I think we can also share more in the conversation later. So I'll give it that at that, and I'll just challenge you to be the change. And maybe in the Q&A later, we can talk more about how do we build more action. And I give the floor to the next speaker. Thank you very much.